It's another edition, a Tuesday, or at least I think it is a Tuesday, edition of NFL Now. Hope you're doing well. Hopefully you and the family safe and healthy. Thank you for watching an hour of football with us today on NFL Network. My name is Andrew Siciliano. I watched a Korean baseball game last night. Coming up, the NFL schedule comes out on Thursday. We'll tell you what we know about that upcoming release. We begin, however, with news this morning of a new team and a new job for Frank Gore. The veteran running back turns 37 next week. He will do so as a member of the New York Jets. It'll be his third different team in 3 years. He is third on the NFL's all-time rushing list, roughly 1,300 yards on that list behind Walter Payton. Tom Pelissero, Ian Rapoport join me now live on NFL Now. Frank Gore, Ian, just keeps on going.
Andrew, when you look at the list of available free agents going into every year, beginning in early March, Frank Gore is on it every year, and the question is always, is he going to retire this year? And the answer probably is he's never going to retire. He turns 37 years old later this month. You mentioned his potential Hall of Fame credentials. The longevity is incredible, and he's not ready to retire anytime soon. He's going to sign a one-year deal with the New York Jets to help spell Le'Veon Bell, and it remains to be seen how many carries Bell ends up getting, but probably at this point going to be fewer than he did last year, and obviously struggled last year in the backfield in Adam Gase's offense. As far as Gase goes, he loves him some Frank Gore. Tom, they were together in Miami. Gase one time told me on the Rap Sheet and Friends podcast they couldn't keep Gore off the field in practice even though they tried to rest him. Will be the same issues in New York this year.
And Ian, that's consistent with what you hear every time you ask any coach, executive, teammate of Frank Gore's through a variety of different teams over the years is the guy loves football so much. And with Adam Gase now headed into his second year with the Jets, he's still in the process of building the culture. Well, in Frank Gore, at age 37, you don't get a full-time running back anymore, but you do get somebody who is going to be really good in the locker room, really good in practice, set the standard that every coach wants to in terms of having that veteran that you can point to and say, that's how the young guys should be doing things, Andrew.
It's amazing. It goes Emmitt Smith, Walter Payton, and then Frank Gore on the all-time rushing list. Gore checking in now as a Jet with 15,347 yards. Marshawn Lynch has also had a pretty good career. Ian, when last we saw him, he was playing a tough guy in Westworld Season 3. Might he reprise his role as a Seahawks running back?
Nobody has ruled this out, and this was an interesting one because for Marshawn Lynch, we've dealt with one retirement before. Then he was traded to a completely different team. Then he played a couple of years and has kind of faded into the background football-wise. Still does a lot of the charity stuff that he's become so famous for, but football-wise, you sort of thought maybe that was it. And then he told Scott Van Pelt recently that his agent, Doug Hendrickson, is discussing a potential return for the Seahawks, which actually makes a little bit of sense because they are dealing with injuries to two of their top backs last year. Both of these guys, you hope that Rashad Penny and Chris Carson will be back for the 2020 season, but obviously there are no guarantees for either coming off major injuries. They've been looking for a veteran running back. This actually would make sense. And one thing we know, Tom, you should never, ever, 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 ever doubt that Marshawn Lynch will be ready to play football if the time comes. We may get another example this coming season.
Well, Ian, my understanding is there is nothing imminent in terms of Marshawn Lynch returning to the Seahawks. He does have really good relationships, though, in that building. Pete Carroll thinks the world of him. This is absolutely something to keep an eye on as we get closer to training camp, especially, as you mentioned, because of the Rashad Penny situation and the possibility that he will not be ready for Week 1. Now, we saw the numbers that Marshawn Lynch put up down the stretch last season when he came back to the Seahawks. Really averaged around 3 yards per carry. Didn't have some of those spectacular beast mode type of plays that we're used to seeing. But he really only trained for a few weeks. He was quite literally just off the couch, had done some training with his longtime trainer, Tariq Azim, just trying to get back used to taking the punishment again. Well, you would think if he has a little bit more time now to get his body in shape, even at age 34, Marshawn Lynch would be that much better. Always a guy who's had some of the best feet for a big running back in the NFL. That's a trait that you did see glimpses of last season.
The one thing he was good at, though, getting in the end zone in the postseason, scored 3 touchdowns in those 2 Seahawks games in January. Ian, you had Andrew Berry, the Browns GM, on the Rap Sheet and Friends podcast. What do you have to say about Myles Garrett?
Yeah, great podcast, by the way. Absolutely worth a listen for you, Andrew. I would recommend it. As far as Andrew Berry goes, I asked him about Myles Garrett. Are there any contract talks to speak of with their franchise pass rusher? And Berry wouldn't get into the specifics of it, but one thing he was very, very clear about. They love Myles Garrett, the person. They love Myles Garrett, the player. And they really do see him as a long-term member of the organization. Of course, this comes all with the background of everything that happened last year for Myles Garrett, being suspended to end the season, the helmet swinging incident. That has done nothing, from my understanding, to damage anything that the Cleveland Browns think of Myles Garrett. And if he is able to get an extension, you have to think he has a chance, a legitimate chance, of being the first $25 million a year pass rusher.
Oof.
Watch him up close, watch him affect the quarterback. Probably be worth it.
Yeah, he's pretty phenomenal when he is on the field. The problem is he couldn't stay on the field the second half of last season. Obviously, we know what happened by now. Tom, fifth-year option, speaking of those 2017 first-round picks, you were working on Saturday. Hats off to you. Mitch Trubisky's option was not picked up. The fallout from that?
Really, it doesn't change anything from the Bears' perspective about 2020. They have made abundantly clear that it is going to be an open competition between Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles. And from everything that I've been told, the Bears have really liked Trubisky's attitude since that trade was executed. He has showed up for everything through the course of the offseason program, the virtual classroom sessions that they've been doing, has had the right mindset going forward here. Now, they did not pick up that 2021 option, which would have been guaranteed for injury only, which means that Trubisky will become a free agent, or can become a free agent, after this season. In other words, there's an opportunity here for Mitch Trubisky, if he can win that job, to make himself a lot of money. And let's revisit some recent Bears history here. A few years ago, they picked up the option on, they did not pick up the option on cornerback Kyle Fuller. He ended up playing well enough. They transition tagged him, matched an offer sheet. He came back, made a couple Pro Bowls. Last year, they did pick up the option on Leonard Floyd, ended up releasing him. It's all up to Trubisky now on what direction things go from here.
But the Bears make the choice not to lock in $24 million for that 5th year, and now Trubisky basically has to go out there and earn the job, and then potentially earn that new contract. Thank you, Ian, and thank you, Tom. Did I mention the schedule is coming out on Thursday? It's coming out on Thursday. You can stop asking. It's here. The 2020 schedule release show is coming up with Rich and Colleen and Kurt and Irv and Mooch and Deion Sanders and Steve White. It's going to give you the first look at the entire regular season schedule and in-depth analysis of every team and division. Do not miss the 2020 NFL schedule release show presented by Verizon. Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on NFL Network. I'm going to give Charlie Casserly, who joins us later, by the way, some credit. He said last week the Cowboys should go get Andy Dalton. Bam! They went and got Andy Dalton. It's not a big deal. It's 1 year. It's $3 million, maybe as much as $7 million. And for everyone who says this is leverage over Dak Prescott, I don't think it is. But I will say this as we welcome in Jane Slater live with us on NFL Now. It does give them a legitimate backup, Jane, just in case things don't work out with them.
Right, and I want to go ahead and put this controversy to bed, because anytime it applies to the quarterback or the Dallas Cowboys, of course, that is headline making. But I've talked to a number of sources, both close to Andy Dalton as well as the Cowboys, and they tell me this is absolutely a situation where Andy Dalton is coming in here not only with the understanding that he is the backup, but that he is. Now, with that being said, to your point, Andrew, in talking to some of my Cowboys sources yesterday, they have not had any meaningful conversations with Todd France and his team since they placed that exclusive franchise tag on him. So that means while they wouldn't confirm it to us, They also didn't say that Dak Prescott was in those virtual OTAs. So guess who is in those virtual OTAs right now? Andy Dalton. But the way they're looking at this is no different than what the Saints did with Teddy Bridgewater. They had a very good insurance policy there in the event that Drew Brees got hurt. And look, Brees did get hurt and helped sustain them to help them make a playoff run. The Cowboys are just putting more attention to this position. Mike McCarthy told us ahead of the draft, we need to bolster this position, not only for trade value, but just having guys in